So I guess today Cliff needs no intro. Obviously, he's the co-founder of Canva, and most of you will know that this is not his first rodeo. Before that, he founded a business called Fusion Books. We're going to talk about the huge success that they've seen, and I think we'd all say that Canva is one of the most iconic companies that have been built in Australia for the last 10 years. But I think I'm probably less than a more important point is they've built this incredible company while being really good humans, and they've managed to hold these two things together. And I think that's a testament to Cliff and Melanie and the amazing culture they've had. So Cliff, thanks for joining us, and it's a pleasure to go out with a bang with you.
Thanks for having me. And thanks, Mel, for doing all the hard work and organisation.
So, Cliff, I mentioned just before the call, we first met you back in 2014, and I remember distinctly seeing you now. We just raised our fund, I think, our 2014 fund 4 or 5 months before. There's a crappy little meeting room up in Underwood Street, which is now office space. And I think both Daniel and I met you and Melanie, and were just blown away by the ambition to build a platform, this obsession with a product that came out from day one. And I took the liberty of going back to our first investment paper. We invested in that round, as you'll know, and just sharing a few metrics here. And have just launched the product in August 2013, and just over 12 months now has 314,000 unique users, growing at 28% month on month. 1.5 million designs published in November, growing at 30% month on month, and almost all organic. Incredible metrics, even at that stage. So I guess to kick it off, that was 6 years ago. What are the metrics you care about, you sweat over now, and how have these changed?
Yeah, so I mean, the metrics we cared about when we first started and still care about to this day is really, we look at qualitative stuff as much, if not more, than quantitative stuff. It's easy to look at numbers and go, oh, that's going up and to the right or this or that. But ultimately, solving a real problem for your users or for your customers is the key to any business, and helping your your customers grow or solving a real problem. And for Canva, we hope we do both for that. Design before Canva was incredibly tough. You had Adobe Photoshop and you had the Microsoft tools like Publisher. And really there was nothing in the middle. There was nothing that allowed a normal person that doesn't identify as a creative professional and have studied the professional design tools to actually get their job done and create a professional looking design. So we solved that problem by making graphic design easy and democratizing it for everyone, whilst also helping them grow their business. So we're solving a problem and giving them a benefit that sort of benefited them. So that was kind of like while that's not a metric, so to speak of, it was really the essence of what we do as a business. And even when we launch new product lines, we're constantly thinking about how can we solve a particular problem beyond what we're currently doing, or what can we do to help our users achieve their goals more, and really thinking about what your users are trying to achieve and helping them get there faster is really probably the essence of good business. And off the back of solving a real problem, then the metrics come in. So when we launched, we're very lucky. We spent a really, really long time building our first product and launching it. It took us over a year, to the dismay of many of our investors that were hot on the topic of the lean startup at the time. So we were getting pestered like, launch early and iterate fast. And we were like, no, we're going to launch a good product because we only have one shot to really impress people. So we invested a lot of time in our first product, and that really paid off. So because we launched a solid product and it was a novel product, there was no drag and drop graphic design platforms on the market at the time, it really resonated and it really helped people achieve things they couldn't have done previously to Canva. And so that really seeded our first wave of growth, which was word of mouth. And we kind of got to 50,000 users. It was signups. At that time, we counted signups. And we migrated away from that probably 3 years into the business journey, because we realized, hey, this is a vanity metric because the only customers that matter are the customers that come back on a monthly basis and use you. Another thing to probably think about, and that
Sorry,
we
if that is it now, where is that one progress? Is that back to MAUs, or do you have another way of tracking this activity set of those users?
Yeah, it's monthly active
Yeah,
users,
yeah,
and yeah, it's pretty like business is pretty simple at its core. You need to create a great product that solves a problem.
yeah,
Then you need to focus on user acquisition, like how do we get this product that solves a problem
yeah, yeah,
in front of users, and that can be performance marketing, that can be SEO, that can be word of mouth, that
yeah,
can be
yeah,
sales driven. So that's top of funnel. And then it's how do you get those users to love you and be engaged in the product. And I'm more thinking through a freemium model.
yeah.
So it's how do you get these users to be engaged with the product, come back, keep using the product. That's the critical part. And I think that's probably the hardest part of the whole funnel. You
Yeah.
can pay for users, but getting them to actually see the value in your product and keep coming back, that is the most difficult thing.
And I think that I'm not just saying this. I think I can distinctly remember coming out of this meeting, and my co-founder Daniel had spent a lot of time with Microsoft, and we both said this is a platform play. And you don't often walk out and say this is a platform play. Did you know at the time that you were building a platform? And if so, like that's I mean, you talk about audacious goals now, but that's a really audacious goal for a very small startup.
Yeah, so Mel and I view the world and growth slightly differently. Mel has had the big plan from the start. She has a pitch deck showing how we're going to crush Google Docs and Microsoft Office. I
Right.
think a lot more incrementally. I find that like, oh, let's go when we're two people sitting in a living room. I find the concept of just destroying Microsoft and Google Docs, I find that a little too daunting, and it's too many steps.
I remember it came up at that meeting. I was like, oh, we go, I mean, Adobe, I could get my head around. Microsoft, ooh, that's pretty hairy out there.
Yeah. So I'm more thinking of what's the next step? How do we launch the product? How do we get our first
Right.
1,000 users? And my ambition incrementally sort of unlocks, kind of like how you're playing a video game or
Yeah.
something. Like you get to one stage, oh, I think I can go bigger and better. So any other sports. So that's kind of how I think about it. I forgot the question, but back to the funnel, you activate your users and you get them to love the product. And that's what we did. We had a free product at the time and we didn't really focus on monetization. We sold images, but that was a small amount of revenue. So what we did, we got users to love Canva and really focused on the user experience and getting them to come back. And then about 2.5 years into the process, we decided to launch our subscription product. And it was because we had a happy, active user base, we were then able to monetize that user base. And we already had that trust and took them through the monetization journey. And then the end of the thing is like referrals and getting people to invite others and making your product more viral.
I just want to touch on that bottom point there, sort of users loving you. And part of that's clearly the product. And you saw Sanj from our team talking about that in our own language, saying that. But also you've seemed to have, from the early days, I think there's 1.5 million designs being created. You could see that on the platform, but you could see how people were talking about it. There was a real sense of community built around that. Has that happened by accident, or have you seeded that community? How have you got the community to build itself around this incredible product?
We did a lot of hard work at actually seeding the community to begin with. So we knew that the biggest problem we were solving was creation, making graphic design simple. And the number one people that had that problem were content creators, especially social media marketers, social media influencers. These people also act like network nodes. Social media marketers by default are building a personal brand, building another brand. So if we can tap the key influencers in a potential market, and this applies to any market, they act as multipliers. So like, for example, one of the first people we got on board was Guy Kawasaki.
Yeah.
We also got a bunch of B and C grade influencers on board. And they acted like network nodes talking about it. We gave them free products. We sort of worked with them, and we really, rather than like tried to get them to sell Canva, the way we approached influencers that we thought could be beneficial to us was like, hey, we're really impressed with what you do. We would love your advice on our products. Like we're learning here and you're an expert at what you do. And you really kind of stroke their ego and ask for their advice. And by getting them involved and making them feel like their opinion's valuable, they actually become sort of ambassadors for the product organically. And we found that model worked quite well, and we sort of scaled that.
Right. And So fast forward to last generation, I think in October, you announced the $3.2 billion round. As part of that round, you announced Canva for Enterprise, as well as, I think you've landed some few interesting clients that there is Skyscanner and Warner, and also Canva for Education, a freemium version for teachers and educators. And at the same time, I don't know whether you've announced this, but I'm sure you're happy to share this ambition to get to 100 languages, which you crushed back 2 or 3 years ago. That level of ambition in the product extensions now, how is that all going, and anything else we could expect from the product?
Yeah, I mean, all these things going really, really well. Our internationalization strategy is going from strength to strength. Enterprise is going really well. Education's going well. The thing we're really focused on now is our Teams product and really making Canva a great collaboration platform, and where we're rolling out simultaneous collaboration, just like you have on Google Docs and whatnot, to really facilitate that collaboration, which is very exciting. Other things we've really doubled down on is video. We realized the web and the world is not a static place anymore. Viewing things in a static design is really a legacy of paper. So like physical paper, and now pretty much all the mediums we consume on are digital mediums. There's no reason why design should be static. So we've really gone heavily into video. And just really doubling down on our core. And then talking back to your question around the app platform, we can't do everything at once, and there's often a long tail of user demands or user problems that need to be solved. So we've built an app store where people can build on top of Canva, as well as sort of moving more and more into the content space through acquisitions of Pexels and Pixabay, and really going heavily on our own content library, both templates, video, photos, etc., because Canva is as much as a content platform as it is a design platform.
And that's had a massive recent effect. I mean, I can see from the press, but I know from inside that's been a really big bump for you guys in that Canva Pro product.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got like 35 million monthly actives now who are creating, I should know this, but I think it was 150 million designs a month.
Yeah, 135 was the last one I saw,
yeah, it grows pretty fast.
That's for everyone out there, that's the mad thing about you see these updates, and by the time you get them, there's an extra 5 or 10 million that's already come through. It's incredible growth story.
Yeah.
Cliff, I just want to shift tactics into team hiring culture. And for anyone out there who hasn't done so, I'd urge you to check out the Canva culture book. It's a really interesting synopsis of how Cam, Cliff, and Melanie all think about, and the broader team think about culture and how it's evolved. But this is also pretty evident from early days when you saw you. I didn't say it in that room, but I think in meeting you was clearly important. Where did that come from? Is that sort of inherent to both you and Mel and Cam, or where did it come from?
I think it's just around we want to work with good people. Like I don't have time
to work
with dickheads. And there's a lot of dickheads out there with big egos, and they're just tiresome. And often the people that present themselves as really flashy individuals that may have worked at a fancy company come into our company and aren't as successful because they just come in and think they know everything. And we've gotten to the stage now where we're actually confident in our own ability, and we actually think humble, down-to-earth people that work hard and have unique ways of thinking actually are the best people. So it's really like we didn't want to work with dickheads from our very earliest days in our first company. We all ate lunch together. We all got along, and we knew what we liked and we didn't like. And along the way, we made bad hires, and people talk about the brilliant arsehole and all that kind of stuff. They absolutely exist, but at the end of the day, they're generally not worth it. And you want to just kind of work with good, intelligent people that are aligned with your vision and you get along with, because you spend, almost 1/3 of your life at work, another third sleeping. So, yeah.
Might as well enjoy it.
People to get along with.
And how have you captured that from the days when there was, I think when we met you, there was something like 12 or 13 people, but to now over 900 people, so channeling that culture, the importance of culture and capturing what is a dickhead or what is not a dickhead. How have you managed to sort of propagate that through the organization or let it evolve?
At a smaller scale, you can do it just by leading by example. and demonstrating the values you live by, and calling people out on values misalignment. We didn't even call them values back in the day. It was just like, hey, we don't do it that way, or how about do it this way or whatever. But as we've scaled, we're 1,000 people now. We've really invested a lot in our values and propagating those values, calling out people living our values, calling out not people not living our values, but instances where as a company we may have done something that wasn't aligned with our values. Like we recently launched something as an experiment on our pricing page that it wasn't purposely misleading customers, but it looked like it was like it had the annual price, had the monthly price, but it was being charged annual, and it was transparent. It was the way that every other company does it, but some of our users found that confusing, and so we took a step back and we called it out to the whole company. Said, hey, we launched this experiment, and while every other subscription service in the world prices their product like this and displays it like that, we actually have such a broad volume of users in so many countries. We need to be clearer than that, and we need to be so transparent to our users that they can't be mistaken for anything. So we called it out and said we messed up here, and we went much more clearer things. So it's just around demonstrating like people really living the values, or parts of the business really living the values, and also being honest with yourself where you've had a misstep and said, hey, this isn't what we do.
And so we've got a lot of founders on this call and at various stages of their journey, and almost everybody is involved in any organization or family, or for that matter, will be interested in how do you do this? How do you live your values? How do you walk the talk? How do you put your hand up when you screw up? And they're all things you should learn, but in terms of bottling that and putting it in an organization, it's harder than you think. Is there any direction or reading or any areas where you could point people to help them distill that and actually put that into place?
I think it really comes back to the people. Like you either generally want good for the world and have positive intent, or you can be a bit shady. And really the culture you have is really a reflection of who you hire, who you fire, and who you promote. So if people see the brilliant assholes in your organization succeeding, that then says to the broader organization that this organization accepts brilliant assholes. If you promote and value the people in the organization that are having a real impact, not just the people that can say a lot of things in a meeting, then the organization starts to understand that, hey, at Canva or at your organization, impact is valued, and your resume or the fact that you went to Stanford, like we get people coming in all the time now that have been to all these fancy schools. So I'm like, I couldn't give a shit. And they start off by saying, oh, I went to Wharton or Stanford or this or that. I don't give a shit. Like we get people to do a challenge and say, hey, here's a challenge, and this is something similar to what you'll have to do in your real job. And we judge them almost purely on that and their career chronology, which is their success at prior roles and how they've worked with others and how they've individually and collectively in a group achieved things.
Can we double click on that? Because I've had some really interesting conversations with you about this as your thinking has evolved about how you're hiring people. I know you've tried a few things and sort of built on top of this idea of sort of the challenge, I think with somebody else in the room, and then an interesting reference. I don't know whether you still do it. There was a reference kind of process to try and really find the real deals, and is how I put it. That platform. Are you able to share that with the group?
Yeah, absolutely. So the challenge is pretty straightforward. Like I think everyone should be doing this, and it depends on your leverage. I mean, it's harder to get people to do really extensive challenges when you're trying to convince someone that's very happy at a role to come out. And so in the early days, this is a little bit more challenging, and you have to rely more on reference checks and other things. But we're kind of fortunate now where we are able to sort of put people through the rigor a bit more, and we always have done this actually. Particularly for engineering, we always have made people do engineering challenges and whatnot. But give them a challenge that's very similar to what they're doing in their role. Get them to put together a presentation or a document around how they would go about something. The other key thing is top grading, and top grading is a really good way, and I'd encourage everyone here to read the Who book. It's called Who by, I think it's someone smart. And just be careful you get the right one, because there is, the father wrote a book and it's really long. And then the son like kind of did a TLDR version, which is still like a chunky book, but it's kind of more modern and relevant. And that really goes through someone's career chronology. And I can give you an example. I'll top grade you, Craig, put you on the spot.
I know.
We would normally go back like 4 or 5 jobs, but it's the same questions for each job. It's kind of like, what were you sort of stretching my memory here? But what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? But then it gets to like the point is, so what was your last job before AirTree, Craig?
Well, it was with Netas, was with my co-founder. So,
what's the last time you worked for someone?
I've been unemployable for a long time. I would say, I think where you're going to go, I go to my co-founders of my startup in the UK. So.
But it'd be like, okay, so, and then I would ask, and what was the name of your, generally be a boss, but
Travel Select. Travel Select.
How do you spell that last name?
Yeah, TRAVELSELCT. Yeah.
And so that's the psychological part where you're writing it down.
Yeah.
They start thinking, oh, he's going to go reference check this person, which gives them this sort of like honesty jolt. And so that leads into my next question. Now, what would Travis give you out of 10 if he was sort of measuring your performance and overall impact on the business?
8.8.
8.8. Okay, that's interesting. So you did a really good job there, did you?
I think so. Yeah.
What, like between 8.8 and 10, what would you say you would have had to do, or what were the sort of gaps that you would have had to fill in order to get there?
This is getting creepy, Chris.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is you drill. You make them feel uncomfortable, because for one, you want people to feel a little bit uncomfortable. You first and foremost, you want them to come away with a sense of liking you, because they also want to work with good people. You want to almost put them to the point of discomfort and really see how they handle that, and also really elicit honest feedback around what their ex-boss or manager would have said their weak points were, with the knowledge that you're going to reference check that. And if you do that over 5 or 6 roles, you really start to build patterns and form a good sort of picture of the person and understand, have they been successful in role to role, or have they been average in role to role? And people are just so honest and end up sort of shooting themselves in the foot a lot of the time, which is good, because you'd rather false negatives.
Make it. And how, I think actually that at least when you've told me about that first, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Have you seen a noticeable difference in, either false positives or false negatives of that process?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I used to be too quick to hire. I would sort of make and I've gone back to operating off my gut feel a lot, actually, because I feel I've trained my gut feel to be much better. And sometimes data-driven recruitment doesn't result in getting those X factor people. It results in getting a homogenous kind of same patterns of thinking, because like I like it when I have someone come in, especially like growth people, and they come in and they really challenge the assumptions, because you can get lots of people that have worked at lots of big companies to do the old growth plays that are tried and tested, and there's lots of blog posts about, but the people that are going to have multiplying effects on your business are the sort of inventors and innovators that are going to think outside the box and look to industries outside of tech. And like, this is something I think tech doesn't do enough, is look outside of tech into sort of the automotive industry. How are they doing marketing or user acquisition or customer success or anything really? There's lots of adjacent industries that have been around for a while and do have things figured out, or things we can at least learn from. Like, or even like the travel industry, for example, they operate on such fine margins with their performance marketing that there's a lot of goodness to learn and apply to SaaS. Things like scaling, bidding on keyword terms and automation. So there's just, don't ever everyone generally goes and looks to sort of their industry and who's the sort of one step up, but you can.
So is there any noticeable adjacent industries where you've found pools of talent that flip across and bring something new? I mean, travel, I get. My first startup was in travel, how tough that business is. In order to make money, you've got to be incredible at performance marketing, to your point. But in sort of outside,
I think one thing, it's more of a job that's interesting and kind of translates across tech and non-tech is sort of operations and being able to just figure out and problem solve. And tech's got a bit of a learning curve, but if you're good at problem solving and you're a hustler and you're good with people and you're good at leading groups of people to achieve an outcome, the tech part can be learned. Like, I didn't know how to use computers when I started Canva. I used to hate computers so much. I still don't really like them, to be honest. But like, you figure out the tech piece. And I think the tech piece can actually be learned pretty quick.
So again, I'll just go flip again into a new area, if that's all right, Cliff. And if we get time at the end, I can see some questions coming in through on the right, so we can fire up some of the questions from the group. If I can go to fundraising, if that's all right. I mean, you guys are unique in many ways, but one of them is unique in the ability to raise capital when you're profitable for investors you choose, presumably. How did you get yourself in that position? How's your view of fundraising changed over time since we met you in that crappy little room in Underwood Street to now being feted by, presumably, almost every VC around the world?
Yeah, well, as a founder, you've got one primary job, and this is the job that if you fuck this up, everything else will go to shit. It's like, don't run out of money. And then the next thing you need to understand is your leverage. So when you're smaller and you don't have a lot of success, you don't have much leverage, and the investors can sort of call the shots a lot more. And I guess when you think about raising funds, you need to understand the investors you're raising from and understand what they're looking for, and understand every investor in the world, I'm sure, whether they have it mentally or physically, have a checkbox of things they're looking for. And I mean, ideally, it would be like product market fit, revenue growth, user growth, strong founders with an unfair advantage in that industry that gives them a unique sort of perspective. Like, there's a whole bunch of things. There's like solid engineering team. There's an infinite number of things, and you're never going to have all of them, even some of them, often any of them, if you're pre-launch as an early stage startup founder. So you need to stack the deck in your favor and try and make it as easy as possible for those investors to invest in you. And probably the first thing you need to do is have the investors like you. If the investor doesn't like you as a human, they're not going to invest. I reckon. Is that fair?
I think most investors have their own version of a no dickhead policy.
Yeah. So like, the first thing you do when you sit down with an investor is make a bit of small talk, like not boring small talk. Be yourself, be genuine, and build a bit of honest rapport. And this goes with any type of sales, and pretty much any deal at the end of the day always comes back down to a human decision. Some human is making a decision on a bunch of inputs that is going to result in them deciding on whether they're going to choose you or someone else or no one. And so understand the human factor behind anything you're doing, because this world is not a fair world, and you need to understand how it's constructed so you can deconstruct it and work the various things and manipulate the system essentially to get what you want to achieve. So at the start, we wanted to raise money. We wanted to raise money from some people in the US and Australia. Australia had a very early, it was essentially non-existent. I think you guys weren't even around when we raised our seed.
You just done the Blackbird one just before we closed out. We left out us, we did Blackbird's first fund, and we raised our first fund, I think, just when we did your second.
Just after, yeah. So we always had to go to the US because there weren't the dollars here. And there weren't progressive funds like AirTree who sort of invest on what's now considered globally founder-friendly terms. Back in the day, it was sort of real, what I call vulture capital, where they wanted their founders cash and they wanted to control the business. So we were like, we want to meet, and Blackbird had just launched their first fund or had barely launched it. So we're like, and they didn't have enough money to fund our whole round. So we needed to go to the US. In order to stack the deck in our favor, we needed to sort of set ourselves up as a US company, because if we went to the US and said, oh, we're an Australian company, that was just a huge, big black mark that they didn't want to have to invest.
Do you think you have to do that now? I know you did that at the time, but
probably not now. But we would, we were two people from Perth without any tech experience. So we had to find a technical co-founder that had some technical experience and ideally like a brand name under his belt. And that's why we brought in Cam, who was ex-Google, or was at Google. And that really like gave us credibility because two people from Perth with no technical experience, we were just struggling. We got rejected over 100 times for our seed round. So, and how that's evolved over time, we've proven product market fit, we've proven growth, we've proven revenue, we've proven profitability. And then it's really, you have the leverage and now we understand our leverage. We can, we can kind of...
You choose, right?
Yeah.
And then how do you choose?
It's really like who we like, to be dead honest. And I think we do a pretty good job of running the business. So we generally choose investors that are sort of non-meddling and that don't want to have a huge operational kind of say in the business because we kind of back ourselves to make those calls. And that being said, we do like to work with investors that can be helpful in certain areas. Like our investors have been very helpful, yourselves included, in introductions to especially people for hiring. I think you recently referred someone that we hired. And so that's like incredibly valuable because the quality of your company is the quality of the team you build. So hiring, I would say, would be probably the most important thing investors can help with. Also connections to people solving, like to people who can help you solve certain problems. And this is where we really leverage advisors because especially based in Australia, you can't hire the best of the best talent in every field.
And you guys, you have been. That was one of my questions earlier. I wanted this quickly because I want to get to the COVID piece, but which I think that the group's probably wants to hear. But one of the other notable things is you've been very good at going out and find the best point solution for a problem you've got. And like everyone gets that theoretically, but you've actually found the right people. How do you know whether someone's full of shit or whether they actually know what they're talking about, firstly, and how do you get them to come into the fold?
The way we approach a lot of it, so we, at our scale of growth, there's very few people that have done it at our scale in Australia. Like Atlassian's essentially an enterprise product and doesn't have the same level of like top of funnel user acquisition. Like we've got consumer level user acquisition like Pinterest or some social networks. So we can't even poach from Atlassian or Google because Google are a totally different beast. They've got great product expertise and whatnot in Australia and great engineering, but they're not working on user acquisition. They're not doing a lot of things. So like growth is probably the hardest area where Australia lacks like the experience at our level. So, and the way we approach anything, the same with like enterprise, I'll go look to find the best person I can possibly find in the world to come on as an advisor. And we'll give them 50, 100 grand advisor shares over a 2-year period, structure that advisor agreement really strictly so they have key deliverables. What you don't want in an advisor is someone that's going to rock up 2 weeks and just give you opinions from the top of their head. You want someone that's going to actually do work, and you're going to need to document the work that they're going to do, the time that they're going to invest in the advisor agreement. So it's impossible. Well, it's not impossible, but it's very difficult to go get someone best in the world, pull them out of a Silicon Valley company where they're getting paid a shit ton, heaps of options. But you can get 1 day a month of their time to really, really work on the business. And what we get them to help us with first and foremost is finding that right person. So we get them to define what success in that role looks like. We get them to present leads to us. We get them to help with the interview process, pitching. We also get them to help with the roadmap of what that function looks like. So what do we need to do as an enterprise product to take us from 0 million in revenue to 10 million in revenue within an 18-month time frame? And what are all the key hires we need to make? What are all the structural things we need to build, et cetera, et cetera. So we just kind of think of where we want to be, reverse engineer it, and really hire someone that's done it multiple times before and who is best in class to help us then hire and execute on that plan.
Well, you certainly nailed that with, I know Guy Kawasaki is a notable one, but I know there's a myriad of other people that I've seen over the years you brought in to help. Just switching to COVID. So I think when, as James mentioned, when the shit hit the fan in that sort of early March period, you and Melanie played a really important leadership role, I think, in our sector in the open letter that was really trying to get people to take notice about what we should be doing. to isolate and stop the spread, which really, I think, galvanized a lot of us in how to think about our organization, how to talk about it to our friends and to the broader community. That now seems like an obvious move, but at the time it wasn't. How did you come to that?
So we have an office in China. We have an office in Wuhan, China. And I used to be a history teacher. So I like to look at history and like to look elsewhere in the world. I think most of the mistakes that the world and the government's making now have been made multiple times before. So it's quite annoying just to see people not reflect on history and apply those learnings to today. They sort of seems to be a generational sort of wiping of collective memory, which is sad because we're not learning from our past. And past being like you can learn from what's 3 months ago. I saw what was happening in China. And realize this is spreading really, really fast, and this is a serious thing. And I think as a country, as a globe, we all need to kind of lock down to stop the spread. And really at that time, it was around like flattening the curve. And the big concern, which you saw in New York and play out in many, many other places, is the disease started spreading and overwhelmed the healthcare system, which resulted in people not being able to get the medical attention they needed, which resulted in deaths. So for us, it was an obvious decision, especially as a digital company where we could be in the fortunate position to transition online quickly, to say, hey, this is a serious thing. We've seen it spread in China. Let's call it early. There's no benefits in waiting another week to do the inevitable. At least if we call it early, we can spend the next week or so kind of ironing out the kinks where people still can come into the office and grab their things. And
what did that look like, Cliff? I think that letter went out really fast. I think it was overnight. Yeah. Internally, I think you have roughly 900 people. Is that right? Across your set.
Yeah.
Okay.
We sort of like.
What did you do? What did you actually put in place, and how did that work in a practical sense when you?
There was a new thing that came out. There was one piece of data that just made it clear. I forget what it was, and I forget the exact date, but there was this one piece of data. I forget whether it was cases in Australia or whatever, but it was about lunchtime, and we just like Mel and I just looked at each other and said, "This is serious now." So that very afternoon, it was a Thursday. We said, from tomorrow, office is optional. Tomorrow's the day to get all your shit, go home. From next week, we're closing the office. We also cancelled our wedding that day as well. It was in Bali. So we called the office, we cancelled it, and we've sort of said everyone's work from home or office optional for the rest of the year at least.
And through that, I mean, the pragmatics aside, at least I was on your pajama announcement party. You seem to have done things that have kept that culture really strong. Just despite sort of disparate teams in 3 different countries. What any tips that you could call out that people might want to hear that you want to keep when you come back to whatever the new norm looks like?
Yeah, we do our all hands over Zoom now, and I think they work way better than in person.
Yeah, I agree. We had our first in person, with much smaller than you, in person all hands this week, and it felt awkward. I don't know.
Yeah, and especially when you got people tuning in, it's like when everyone's online, it's an equal playing field. Everyone has the same distribution of information. When it's in person, you've got a team in Manila and China, and some people are tuning in, and the audio, and it's just like goes to shit. So that's really good. We do a bunch of like asynchronous communications. We have a lot of sort of like we have a lot of clubs at Canva, like wine club and handstand club and board game club, and there's like 200 clubs that all have budgets to sort of like bond. And we moved all of them online. We've moved all our fitness online. We've really ramped up our health and mental health program and just done lots and lots of stuff like that. I think one of the key things that people were struggling with through COVID was just the lack of exposure.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most interesting things for everyone is sort of how to sort of operate your business through a time of crisis. And I sort of think of it in like a racing car analogy and a racing car taking a really sharp corner. So what you want to do, you want to come up to the corner fast, and then you want to and that's sort of as you're running along the straight, business is going as normal. Then you see this corner, and this corner in this case was COVID. And so we were like, let's slam on the brakes, brake hard, and understand sort of what we can cut, how we can slow down. And for us, that was like slowing down on hiring. It was cutting expenses. And it was like, we didn't know, well, to put it another way, I actually prefer a sailing analogy, right?
Yeah.
So you see a storm coming and you're like, let's batten down the hatches. Let's cut spending. Let's slow hiring. Let's focus on our core revenue streams. And at any one time, you may have a bunch of experimental projects out on the horizon. You're like, let's rein them in. Let's focus on our core, because we don't know how big this storm's going to be. Once you enter the storm, you start learning. You're like, okay, are our business metrics taking a hammering? So we have a print business as part of our business, and that got smashed 75% down overnight pretty much. However, some of the other business lines, with everyone migrating to work from home, started accelerating. And so once we were a few weeks to a month into this, we're like, okay, we understand this storm, and there's actually some really significant tailwinds. So let's let out the sails and double down on the things that we know we can like succeed in, and keep some of the other areas locked in. And then
there was I know they're still called it, but there was a point when this series was called slingshotting, which was exactly that metaphor. You put the brakes on and you release the energy when you know what you're doing. So what does that return? What does this return world look like for your team? What are you actually doing from now until, I think you mentioned, to the end of the year you made some decisions?
So we are reopening the office from the 22nd, office optional. We have a lot of people that just can't wait to get back to the office. You think of people working every day in small apartments with roommates, families. There's a bunch of reasons where it's actually affecting people's mental health being cooped up. So it's office optional from the 22nd of this month. And we've encouraged people who are happy and productive working from home to stay at home. This is always going to be a tentative thing. If there is any other outbreak or case numbers start spiking, we won't hesitate to close that office again in a heartbeat. But we're kind of playing that by ear. I think we'll be a lot more flexible with just distributed work and work from home. I think we've seen a lot of the advantages. We haven't seen any performance hits for the most part. And there's things we've learned, like, the all hands and
I just see in the chats, I think Steve's asked a question to see whether you wouldn't mind telling us a bit more about the mental health program you've got in place.
So we have this thing, it's called the EAP, the Emergency Assistance Program, or the something. And what that is, we have a bunch. We have internal coaches as well, full-time coaches that are really helping people get the most out of themselves and work on their own performance, and often mental health and the way they structure their time and their day and their health all maps into sort of their performance in the office. So that's mostly around them getting the most out of themselves professionally and personally. But then the employee, that's what it's called, the Employee Assistance Program, the EAP, that is open to everyone and can be done in person or over Zoom to essentially psychologists, pre-vetted psychologists. And we've got a team.
And you can you make a booking and they're just available?
It's totally anonymous. It's handled through like a platform. Our people ops team has pre-vetted all the counselors, so we know their quality. And then the company pays for it. I think it's up to 10 sessions, but through COVID, we said you can have unlimited sessions. And essentially that's psychologists for people to work through all their troubles. And we do, while it's fully anonymous, we do understand the utilization because we have to pay the bills for it. And that spiked significantly through COVID.
One of the things that, I guess we try and do is think about sort of, underlying trends that technology can enable. I think, what we see in the past, we talk a lot about sort of what may have taken 3-5 years is going to take 3 to 5 months, whether it's sort of SaaS adoption rates or anything from working from home, communications clearly, acquisition costs at the consumer levels coming down 30, 50%. What have you seen in your market? How have you seen that change? And where have you seen the acceleration points?
We've just seen massive use of our platform. Because everyone's working from home, people are needing to communicate more. People are often trying to do more with less. So we've seen big tailwinds on the product. We've also made a bunch of really big product improvements over time. So Canva Pro, our subscription product, includes all you can eat content now, similar to Netflix or Spotify. So you have over 60 million images, videos, templates, all that kind of stuff. So
and you saw just an incredible uptick on that one. For probably two reasons, right? The COVID sort of lockdown, but also there's that life.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I guess maybe turning to you a bit, if that's all right, Cliff. So it's I guess we talk a lot about the founder's journey, and everyone will sit here and say, "God, you just had this sort of blessed journey from bottom left to top right." I'm sure that's not always the case. Well, any kind of screw ups or notable mistakes you'd happy to share that might be useful to other founders on the call?
Oh, I screw up every week. Yeah, like you name it, we've screwed up. I mean, what's got us here is a lot of hard work. Just constantly solving problem after problem after problem. There's always like in any startup, it's constantly it's problems and opportunities, and it's the velocity at which you can solve those problems and seize those opportunities that maps to your growth and your ability to learn. And I think as a founder of a scaling company, it's your ability to reinvent yourself and scale with the company that will lead to your success. Like if I'm not changing the way I work pretty much entirely every 6 months, I'll be left behind.
And how do you do that, Cliff? Do you use coaches, mentors? I know we talk about sort of special advisors, but on a personal level, how do you scale yourself?
I just learn from others, and I just read a lot of books and listen to a lot of podcasts, and I look at how people best in class are doing it. And I really don't think there's people that are best in class at everything. I mean, there's some people that are, but like generally I say like, oh, this person is amazing at performance managing a team. Like I tell you what I've taken the most inspiration out of lately is the Michael Jordan documentary. Like what a leader, what a true leader.
Early on, right? Well, from 20 years old. I mean, amazing.
Yeah. And it's like, it's things like that. It's like, that's the sort of leader I want to be. He led by being the best himself, holding the team like to account, but doing nothing, like holding them to nothing more than he would expect for himself, challenging them when they need to be challenged. Because I think especially like with our leadership team, people often don't understand their full potential. And I often have to say to people, you're amazing, right? Like, and you could be product lead or engineering lead or this or that at any startup in the world. But like, I see you're here and that's fucking amazing. You can get patted on the back for that all day long. I think you can be better, and we need you to be better if you're going to help Canva scale to the next level. And that sometimes is a confronting conversation.
It's scary, right? Yeah.
But some people might take offense. They might like decide to leave, but they're not going to be the people that are going to go to the next level. But the people that can take that challenge and are excited by that challenge and scaling themselves, they're the ones that are really going to help you build something special.
Yeah. Well, I guess that was the Dennis Rodman story and the Scotty Pippen story, right? He pushed them to a new level, so that's an interesting analogy. And what about coaches? I talked about coaches before, and I think you mentioned before coaches available for your teams. Do you have them sort of imbued in the Canva organization as a way to help people navigate this path you're alluding to?
Yeah. So we got coaches in at Canva because Mel and I were recommended coaching by another founder, and we just went, oh, holy shit, wow, this is really impactful, because they just unpacked all the shit in your head, like even as something as simple as like, where are you spending all your time, what's valuable, what's not valuable. If I came in and complained about someone, oh, this person's really bugging me, they're not doing their job, oh, why is they still at the company? And you're like, oh, why are they still at the company? I should probably let that person go. But then after sort of a year of that, I kind of built that muscle in my own head to sort of challenge myself. And so I don't really do too much coaching anymore, but I do learn from people and learn from lots of different people. But coaching is very valuable. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, great. And I think we'd say the same. We've got a bank of I think we talked about mental health before, and we said again, we've got a bank of mental health experts on hand to help do, I think, with our founders and their teams, what I think you guys are trying to do for your team. So that we talk about that every session, but we've also got a bank of coaches that are available to help. So, and as you say, get the shit out of their head and focus on what's important, which I think is.
And there's a great product called Fingerprint for Success that really helps people understand themselves and understand how their teams work. And that's a really great tool. So it's f4s.com, I think it is. And that's a really great tool to sort of facilitate that conversation within teams and get the performance out of your teams. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you need people to be happy in order for them to be productive, in order for them to achieve the goals of the company, in order for the company to succeed.
Yeah. Well, I spoke to Michelle yesterday, actually. She was
excellent.
And helped give her a plug with that, one of her funding things. So yes, that's awesome product. I guess final question: if you had, I mean, this is a full-on role, and clearly you enjoy it, and you've learned a lot, and you're scaling like crazy. But I think when I've spoken to you, sometimes you just need to get away and decompress and unwind. What does that for you?
Lots of things. I'm seeing people kite surf over the road.
I thought you'd say that.
Getting me a bit excited because it's windy.
Yeah.
So I do kite surfing, not enough. I mean, all the usual things like going to the gym, going for a run, travel.
But you need travel. I don't know whether you mind me saying, but you don't sit down. You just don't go and, well, maybe you do walk around the streets of Rome and drink coffee. You go to remote places that are hard to get to, the interesting sort of almost adventure type holidays. You seem to anyway. Like last, I don't know when it was, last year, the year before, when took motorbikes end to end of Bhutan and rode horses in Mongolia, and that's not normal
stuff. Don't actually cost that much more than a regular holiday, but I think maybe we've conditioned ourselves with doing startups the whole time, but I think life kind of begins at the edge of your comfort zone, and unless we're feeling sort of challenged mentally, physically, or whatever, it's kind of a bit mundane. So I like to push it to the edge a bit.
Yeah, I can see that. You seem to come back with an extra big smile on your face when you've done that. I think we're almost out of time here, Cliff, and I'm just making sure we've covered the notes in the side doc. So I guess in the interest of respecting the 3:00 close off, we should wrap it up here. I think, Cliff, I know you're super busy, so we're super appreciative for you coming in and sharing your insights. I think everyone will see. I think everyone knows the Canva story and they know the culture story, but I think what's evident here is that you are walking the walk and you are talking the talk and you're living the real deal. And I think that's been hugely impressive for us to watch as AirTree, but I think more broadly for the Australian ecosystem. So thanks for the time, and hopefully we'll catch you next time. And for everyone else, thank you for joining, and hopefully that was a useful session.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.